Welcome back, Rock Forever, bringing you the hottest rock, the new releases, and the greatest stories in rock and roll. We got a special guest. He is the co-founder, vocalist, songwriter of the Sharks, aka Shark Island. They've got a great history, and we're going to hear about it and all about the new record Bloodline and all that's happening in their world. Please welcome Richard Black.
Thank you, Jay. You got me all right here?
Yeah, man, we got you live and in color, all the way from I guess you're out towards Santa Barbara, up the coast a little bit.
Yeah. I'm out in the sticks here. So
okay. Well, we're in the heart of the city over here by Universal Studios, Hollywood, Studio City. So I know you know that area well. I'm sure you went to a few shows at Universal Amphitheater back in the day.
Yeah, right.
We miss that venue. But yeah, let's talk a little bit. I know you grew up in that San Gabriel Valley area, Pasadena, Arcadia, coming out in 79. Obviously, it was a ripe time with Van Halen exploding out there in 78. Talk about, putting the group together, originally called the Sharks, and, with your guitar buddy, Spencer, talk about, the impetus and the idea, the direction, in the band originally.
Well, we were around 79. We actually got together, and I had just left a glam band out in Hollywood, and Spencer kind of had a gig going with doing cover songs at parties and that kind of thing. And I went down to the studio, and we just, I joined him on a couple things, and we decided just to have a go of it and have a band of it. And we just kind of continued doing cover songs and backyard parties, which is kind of a thing of the past now. No one, I don't know if anyone knows. Well, some people may know what that is, but we would do, any hall we could rent and any backyard we could take over, and we would do, cover songs of, everything from Zeppelin to Aerosmith to whatever. And
usually involve kegs of beer and all ages kind of thing.
Yes, sir. Of course. Yeah. All ages and plenty of kegs. Right. That, when I think about it, it seems like it's still happening, but I know better that kind of thing isn't really happening.
Well, in this PC world, all it takes is one neighbor who's pissed off, who's got LAPD on speed dial, and all of a sudden nobody's got permits. It's anything after 10 p.m. is disturbing the peace.
All right. Yeah. It's that's how it is. I don't think you can pull it off today, but that was the way it went. We kind of I guess I was kind of inspired by Van Halen. Van Halen kind of came through like right before that, and that's kind of the blueprint that they were doing. They were doing cover songs, and again, in people's backyards, at people's living rooms, at any hall you can get, at the civic center, at the college, whatever you can do, and that's what they were doing. So that was kind of like what bands were doing at the time. Everybody wanted to kind of follow in their footsteps, because it was such a unique event, and it was just fun for all the people that were young and wild at the time.
Yeah, you didn't have to have all the the constraints of a bar and 21 and up, and a greedy bar owner wanted to keep all the bar and the profits. You wanted to throw a party and get away with it wherever you could. If you had a generator, you could throw it in the middle of a park or out in the mountains somewhere.
And we did that. In fact, kind of a funny story. We were at one of our very first gigs. It might have been our real first big gig. We had rented in Arcadia. They actually have a mounted policeman's unit, which is mounted on horses, right? So they have a hall there, and we rented their hall under the guise of we're having a wedding. So we got the hall, and we're at the policeman's hall, and again the kegs were there and the people were there, and everything went without a hitch. No one from the police actually showed up, so we were actually right under their nose. playing, rock and roll in their hall and drinking beer illegally, and that kind of gives you an idea of the type of thing you could pull off back then. And fond memories there.
Yeah, we'll talk about how the band evolved. I know, you guys had created a independent album, Alter Ego, recorded right here in North Hollywood at the studio with a couple guys that had played with Steven Stills, Mike Finnegan, and Jerry Tolman. Talk about the experience of putting out your first release and that learning process, and how the band was growing and with your originals.
Yeah, it was that was a very good experience. I mean, everybody was very laser focused on, getting a record and doing a record. And at the time, there was a few people doing, independent. So we had a manager that was kind of, you know, willing to fund a lot of it, and he had knew some people, and we were actually in the studio. I mean, you actually felt at the time, you're going, wow, we're really making progress, we're really being successful. But looking back, it was just they were just baby steps, and it was just a learning experience, and we had no idea what we were doing. Luckily, there was people that knew how to turn the knobs and kind of direct us as best as they could. But at the time, with our age, you're always battling with your with your own kind of ego, and trying to present yourself in a particular way, right? So and to really be to break through in the music, as far as creative writing, you really have to kind of put that aside. You have to kind of separate yourself from that. You can't be influenced by what you believe people are perceiving you as. You just have to do the best job you can at the time, regardless of the circumstances and regardless of anything. Like me right now, we just came and did this little interview together, and I'm literally outside shoveling horse shit, and I'm this was a few years ago, I would have did makeup and did my hair and put a nice thing on, and now it's just like, well, whatever, we just, this is life, this is reality. So
Yeah,
but
you roll with it. Now when you put the independent album out back then, this was kind of in the middle of punk rock and new wave. Were you able to get the album on consignment or however into like your Tower Records or the Licorice Pizzas or any of those
yeah,
chain stores? Or of course, there was some famous independent stores out there at the time, Pooh Bah's in Pasadena, stuff like that.
which is still there, by the way.
Yeah.
They just moved, but they're still in town. Yeah, we did put things up, and we had like Music Plus and Sam Goodies and that. We didn't have distribution through the front door. We had distribution through the back door, because at the time, even if you had a record chain store, you had access to the manager of the store, and you could make a side deal for him, say, hey, can you put our record up in your store and stuff. So yes, but we didn't do it in an orthodox manner. We just kind of went on to every single store and had a talk with the manager and put the records in there, and anywhere we could sell them, really.
Yeah, but that's a step, it's an exciting time to walk into one of those stores, and your vinyl is right there, in the same store as Van Halen or Scorpions or AC/DC or any of the
Right.
favorites.
Somehow feel justified, right? Here we are. We are really here. We're right in the rack there. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. I mean,
We'll talk about as you evolved through the early 80s, you sensed it was time to update the name to Shark Island, and you guys became the house band at the world famous Gazzarri's on the Sunset Strip, right next to the Roxy Theater and the Rainbow, and down the block from the Whiskey. And of course, it was the Central back then, but people know it as a Viper Room today. What constituted the name change, and what made the decision to get into Gazzarri's like on a pretty much full-time basis there?
yeah, we were there. We were at Gazzarri. We were the band, the headliners at Gazzarri's every Friday and Saturday for over 2 years. I mean, that's got to be some kind of record even for the history of that club or that building for that matter. You know, doing parties and that kind of thing was kind of a hit and miss because you always didn't have you always didn't have a gig available. So what we decided to do is become essentially house bands at a handful of clubs around LA and Orange County and Riverside County just to pay the bills. So it kept us busy. We played, you know, 6 days a week minimum, sometimes 7 days a week, several shows a night, and that's all we did. We didn't have no one had a day job. We didn't do anything but gigs. So we knew that the gig on the weekends was going to be at Gazzari's, and we knew that Tuesday was going to be in Pasadena, and we know Wednesday was going to be, you know, at Ichabod Cranes or something, or wherever. And so that was kind of our jump to legitimize ourselves and get like a constant, a steady stream of income, because, you know, that's how we survived, Jay. That's just what we did, you know. I mean, there was a lot of people that had day jobs, and then they would, you know, change their hats and come and do a show every couple of weeks in Hollywood or whatever. But we played all the time, so I had a lot of stage hours, and it taught me a lot to be that visible for that long period of time. I mean, it went on for years, literally years. And
yeah, well, that's the woodshedding, you know. You paid your dues, you know, covers, originals, and you knew, you know, it was a familiar time and place. So all the fans in Hollywood, hey, come see us Friday, Saturday night. We're right on the Strip. Or, you know, fans in Riverside County, you know, come out and see us every Wednesday. So you built some, you know, some consistency there. But more importantly, rather than rehearsing to four walls, you know, you're able to, you know, get that stage experience and try out some new originals, you know, on some rock fans.
yeah, we were writing, you know, writing things during sound checks, you know, in the afternoons before the show started, because hey, we had a stage and a PA and a big room. So let's work on some originals. So we worked on it everywhere, you know. So yeah.
Well, I know, again, you guys developed your craft. I moved here in 1980 from the Pacific Northwest, and I remember when you guys had the whole sidewall, you know, the famous billboard on the side of Gazzari's. You know,
Right.
anyone that doesn't remember, you might see some old pictures. At one point, Bill had, besides the big name of the club, he had written all the names of the bands that had played there, the Doors and the Van Halens and the Rats and whoever. But I'm sure part of your deal with him is, hey, we're going to get the wall. You know, tell us about coming up with the concept, what you were going to paint, and how you pulled off that giant portrait. I don't know what the dimensions were. I don't know if you
Yeah,
remember.
it was big, and you know, at looking back on it, it was pretty great. I have thoughts of it that it was kind of, because frankly it was Bill Gazzari's idea. Bill wanted to promote us, and he thought, you know, he used to always say, you know, the Doors used to play on this stage, you know. And I mean, it's a pretty good imitation of him, by the way. And he thought that we're going to be the next thing, so he was trying to promote us. He wanted to paint that big mural on the side, and I was like, oh gosh, I wasn't ready for it, because it really didn't, the mural didn't depict what I had imagined at the time that I wanted the band to be. But it didn't matter, I guess, because it was promotion. It was a big promotional piece, and it was there for a really long time. And here we are talking about it, you know, 40 years later or whatever. And so I guess it did have some impact. And it went on, and it was just going on and on and on, and it never actually got finished until he finally decided. If you have pictures of it, he already decided that he was gonna name it like like the world record for the unfinished sign or something, because it was an unfinished mural. You can see like the bottom portion of it wasn't completed yet, right? But gosh, you just made me think of it. I haven't thought of that for so long, but
I'm sure you got pictures of it, right?
I probably have one photograph of it, believe it or not, like one photograph, and it's kind of right. It's kind of there. It's not like a straight on shot either. It's kind of a wide shot, but it's there. I have it somewhere. I should dig it up and maybe scan it and blow it up or something, make something of it. But it's remarkable how little we'll call it evidence there is of that whole time period. I mean, here you are. I mean, you're a witness of what happened in the 80s. You pretty much came at the perfect time for what Hollywood was. I mean, you could probably tell like a lot of really great stories of what the Sunset Strip was, and what music was, and what the whole scene was. I mean,
Well, yeah,
think
on a
back.
Friday or Saturday night, from Gazzari's to the Whiskey was thousands of young people, hot girls, guys looking for girls.
Literally,
Everybody's
you had to
hair
walk.
was up and
Exactly.
puffed, and
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, you
everybody
had
was
to walk
dressed
in
to
the street.
impress,
It was dressed to impress.
and
The
everybody
sign.
had flyers. I mean, the street was full of flyers.
Yeah, people passing things out, shoulder to shoulder. I mean, if you wanted to make some time, you had to walk in the street on the other, next to the parked cars just to get some motion, because it was literally you couldn't move. It was a phenomenal time. Um, wow. I mean, it's nothing. It doesn't even resemble that now, and it would be hard to imagine. But that, I mean, it was like Disneyland on a packed summer day. Just about
Yeah,
every.
the hormones were raging. I mean, the skirts were short and the heels were high. I mean, it was really, a red, hot-blooded American male's dream. I mean,
Yeah,
the
it really
the
was.
wall to wall, and the music's coming out of like every other building. The Whiskey, the Central, the obviously the Rainbow, and that parking lot behind the Roxy, and then of course
Right.
Gazzari's, and Gil Turner's Liquor up on the corner. So it was really something. Yeah, you really can't explain it to somebody. A new
Yeah.
generation, you can tell them there was a lot of people out here, but unless you were in there, the sights, the smells, the feel, the sounds, you couldn't really describe it.
No, you really can. We can go on and on about it, and I don't think anybody would really still get it. They wouldn't get it because there's nothing really like it anymore. I mean, it was a really great time. I I feel fortunate, and I'm sure you do as well, to have even experienced it. It was really a great time to be alive, and it was a great time for rock music.
Yeah, and of course, Bill Gazzari, the self-described godfather of rock and roll,
Uh-huh.
had run that club since the '60s. And back in the heyday, there was all these different clubs up and down Sunset, all the way to Laurel Canyon and Fairfax. I mean, it used to go farther, east up there. But that strip, obviously famous for so many bands start, was just electric. And what can you say about the late great Bill Gazzari? Because I know he took a chance on you guys. He gave a lot of bands their first start. He loved rock and roll. Of course, he loved the girls and the dance contests and all that. But what can you say in passing of Bill
He was
Gazzari?
he was one of those old old time guys. He was from the East Coast, and he had real sense of principle and honor. And he was the only person, even to this day, in the music business that never really screwed anybody over that I could see. Certainly not me in any way. Everything was done with just a handshake. Hey, all right, everything was really great. Everything was on your word. It was honesty, and it was going to be straight up. He was very eccentric, but that doesn't matter. I mean, he was a very kind of an interesting fellow. He would come to the club, early, and he would have his paint splattered jeans and shirt. And he would do all the building inside, and he had secret passages throughout the club, and he had a toilet in his office, you know, and just like weird things. And then at the end, he'd go home and take a shower. Then he'd put on this big, you know, fancy zoot suit almost, and he'd come and be the godfather of rock and roll. And he loved the girls that, you know, that hung around, the women and stuff. And it was he was a really great guy. But you couldn't pull anything over on him. But at the same time, he wouldn't pull anything over on you either. Yeah,
Yeah, he was
he was
like
a
a character out of a movie, man, like a mafia movie or something. It's like, you know, he's a caricature, you know. And now in passing, we can laugh about the commercials on the radio and all that. But it was just good, fun times, man. It was rock and roll. It was hot girls. He wanted to see people out on the dance floor and just, you know, make sure they went home happy and sweaty
Yep,
and, you know, a little tipsy.
yep, yep. It was good. He was a good guy. He was a good guy. Someone should do a like a book or something on just the club and the history and the people that came through it. It would be a very interesting book, but I don't think there's enough people really that know all the details about it anymore.
Yeah,
There's
I mean, it should be a book on the whole strip and a whole big couple chapters on Gazzari's, chapters on the whiskey and the Rainbow and the Roxy. But you know, just in the last few years, we've lost the founder of the whiskey and the founder of the Rainbow. So we're talking to second and third generations at this point. But still, you know, people worldwide heard about the Sunset Strip, and you know, there's definitely a movie or a book or you know, coffee table book. You know, I'm friends with a guy who he documented all the big music billboards. If you remember back in the 70s, a record company, A&M or CBS or Warner Brothers, they take out a big billboard on Sunset, you know, for
yeah,
the new Van Halen or the new Peter Frampton album or the new Supertramp or Jeff Beck, you know, whatever it was. He documented in photos all those great billboards. And you look at it because it's a thing of the past. I mean, if you saw a music billboard now, you're kind of shocked. It's like, wow, it's you know. But back then, it was kind of an ego stroke. It cost them, you know,
yeah,
thousands of dollars a month. But when that
and
band came to town and stayed at the Hyatt House or something, you know, Led Zeppelin could look across the street and see, you know, a billboard for Led Zeppelin 4 or
yeah.
Physical Graffiti or something.
And from a fan's perspective, it was almost, I remember almost looking forward to what's the next billboard going to be, who's the next, you know, what's going to be up next, you know. And you can always kind of gauge where music was heading based on those billboards. Yeah, that was a big thing. There was a lot of a lot of changes.
Yeah. We'll talk about eventually getting signed to Epic Records, of course, part of the CBS family, now Sony, you know, and I know it was a heartbreaking experience, you know, having that opportunity, but just not having all the ducks in a row, you know. But tell us you know, the evolution. How did you get signed? Who was your A&R guy, you know, making that record and, you know, what you learned from that experience?
Well, it was on the heels of doing that movie, the soundtracks for Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. So by doing that project, and I was at the time, I had a development deal with A&M Records, which was a real kind of an artsy boutique kind of label, but
Oh yeah,
really
the A&M lot at Sunset in La Brea, which was used to be the Charlie Chaplin studios. Now it's the Henson, the Muppet home. That's a
unbelievable.
famous lot. And even that recording studio,
It's like
Van
being
Halen, everybody recorded there. They recorded "We Are the World," you know, in that soundstage.
it's one of the best. It's the best studio in my opinion. I mean, it's arguably the best studio in LA. And if it's not for the rooms, the lot itself aesthetically was just very conducive to just artists and music, and they had a big sound stage. I think even Michael Jackson did some of his videos there. So everything was a great place.
I mean, you
And
felt creativity coming out of every door and window on that lot.
exactly, you couldn't help it. It wasn't corporate at all. There was bungalows on. It was like an old campus or something. Or it reminded me of the Tudor style you know buildings inside with weird. Every office was different and with and you can just walk around. And once you get inside the gates, you're like in another little little world, even though
Yeah,
you're right.
it's like a Disneyland of a record
Exactly.
label, and
It
it's
is.
co-owned by a musician himself, Herb Albert. He's the A of A&M.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, I was with them on a development deal with
Who was the A&R guy that did that deal?
Jacobus, Aaron
Oh yeah,
Jacobus.
Aaron Jacobus. Yeah.
Wow, gosh, I remembered that. Woo. So, um, yeah, so I was on a development deal with pretty much just me. They wanted me to do a solo thing, and I wasn't ready to do it at the time. And we did the music video for Bill and Ted's, and then after that, we had some connections from working there, with some producers and stuff. And he brought the band to Epic, and they signed us. The biggest problem with signing it, it was a really good deal as far as deals go. The biggest problem was that if you recall, what was happening at the time is that the kind of the grunge scene was really taking hold, like Temple of the Dog and Mother Love Bone
Nirvana, Soundgarden,
and Soundgarden,
Pearl
right?
Jam.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I started. I actually saw the writing on the wall. I was kind of going, gosh, something's going to change here, because I remember people from A&M, every weekend we're flying up to Seattle to go see, Temple of the Dog or Soundgarden or something, and I was going, gosh, this is like, and I could feel it that the winds were changing at the time. And then we get signed, and then all of a sudden everything went full on grunge. It went full on, and it really kind of exploded, in my opinion. Some people will say it was Nirvana, but in my opinion it really was Pearl Jam that kind of just exploded it and put the final death nail in what was described as rock and roll, at the time. And you
Yeah, there
know
were bands from LA moving to Seattle and donning flannel just to try and get a deal.
exactly. And if you were, I mean, if from my perspective, there wasn't really. I mean, there was a little bit difference as far as the guitar tones and arrangements and vocal styles, but it wasn't anything huge. I mean, but it was almost a revolt against what rock had become. What had rock become at that point? It was like Poison and Warrant, and it was like tight spandex and you know
Well,
tight
everybody was
pants.
trying to outglam the other, and it got
It was
rather
like
ridiculous.
the more you look like a girl, the better, and that's what it was. And it got so ridiculous that you know it got so commercial that it didn't have any credibility anymore. And I think that the grunge movement was kind of like a revolt against that. And that's why you see, torn jeans and Pendletons and beanies. And at the time, that was like the whole thing. But it didn't take long for, the torn jeans. It had to have a certain type of tear in the right spot. It had to have the right kind of Pendleton.
Oh
So
yeah, fashion designers were making distress jeans and and
exactly.
all that.
So it became the theater of the absurd as well, pretty fast. But some people like to say, oh, this is a revolt against glam rock or hard rock or whatever. This is the new thing, and it kind of, they bought it, and it went, and it did really well. I mean, it did super well, and that kind of screwed it up for us, because we were still labeled as like a rock band. I think at the time we had lost our A&R person at Epic, so we didn't have really a dog in the fight for us, to do, because I think Shark Island was different enough that we could have morphed into a different style. I didn't have to. I didn't look like Poison or any of those people. I didn't really act like them. I didn't really dress like them. It was always a little bit kind of peculiar, a little bit different, and it wouldn't have been that much of a stretch just to move in that direction. I could write in that way too. But once you're labeled as a particular artist, it's hard to shake that, and especially if you don't have your A&R person that signed you there in the first place, they're rooting for you, fighting for you. because no
Yeah,
one wants.
that's the death nail, because no one wants to touch you, because if it fails, they get blamed for it, and
That's
if it
right.
succeeds, they don't get the credit because somebody else brought it in.
That's exactly. So I'm speaking to the choir. You know exactly. That is the absolute truth. Because it was at the time a pretty small little community, the A&R people at the labels, and everybody was looking at what are they signing? What's that? What's that? Because you're only as good as your last gig, the last thing you did. So everybody's very, very nervous about making any kind of decisions that was outside of the norm, that wasn't expected. So once you lose your inside person, it was just like no one's going to take a chance. Now you're gonna. I mean, who are you going to do? I mean, everybody has their own favorites. Every A&R person at every label had their own favorites, and they were hoping that they could somehow structure it so that they could get the credit for it and so on. And like you said, no one's going to get the credit for us because it's already there. So
Yeah, they go into these marketing meetings, and the A&R guy is pushing his priority project, and you guys didn't have anybody in that meeting
that's
pushing
exactly
for
right.
you.
That's exactly right. Um, and those meetings are real, by the way. They're not just television. They're real. I've been to a couple of them myself. I've had a fight for a few things, and that I didn't think I needed to. I thought they were self-evident. One thing that comes to mind was we had a song on a gathering of not Law of the Order called Paris Calling, and I thought it had all the components of a really kind of a hit, catchy song. The subject matter was great. Kind of unrequited love. And it was about an exotic place, Paris, and it was sad and it was rocking and it had a good beat and it had a good refrain. I felt it had all the components, right? And I thought, okay, this is obviously probably if there's going to be a hit, this is the one we should probably get behind. So I get to this meeting, and they're like, well, we don't know if we're going to put that on the album. And I'm like, what? And literally, and I'm sitting there with a bunch of, stuffed shirts around the table. And I go, what do you mean you're going to put that? That's the best song. So if you have to fight and make a big stink at that point, where does it go? And I was a lot younger then. I would have probably handled it a little bit differently. But, when you're younger, you don't have the discipline. You don't know when you should speak and when you should not speak, how you should speak, how you should when you're dealing with business things like that.
Yeah, you don't have that big picture experience. You're acting on an instinct or a gut, and
and that
there's
was
a lot of seasoned pros in there that won and lost a lot of battles. They know how to
exactly. And
play
here
the
I
politics.
Yeah, and here I am, some long-haired guy, expendable. Who cares? We know better. What the hell do you know? That kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, a lot of fate of a lot of artists are just determined in those meetings. I mean, they walk out of an hour, 2 hour meeting. Some acts are literally done. It's like, all right, we're going to concentrate on these three over here.
right,
Everybody else, their history. And once they decide that, there's not a finger lifted or a phone call made, for that act.
right. And there's a lot of capitulation you have to be willing to deal with. I, I mean, my deal. Law of the Order. I like the album. I think it really came out really good. Is it exactly what I had in mind? Not exactly. It was close. It was a reasonable facsimile of it. My idea was, we had an album called Live at the Whiskey, Bastille Day Live at the Whiskey, which was recorded right before the album was, right. And it was a live simulcast with Westwood One from the Whiskey A Go Go, and it went out to like 1.5 million people, and that was back in probably 88, 89 maybe, and it was live, recorded, and there was no do-overs. This was it. This was going out to the world. At the time, 1.5 million people was a lot of people to reach. There was no internet or anything. And I wanted that album to be the debut album. I wanted to debut Shark Island with a live album. It was just unheard of. Who does that? Who does that? I mean, it was just like, no one's done it. Therefore, no one was willing to take a chance on that. That was crazy talk. You know, that was crazy.
Yeah,
That would be like,
there's no precedent. There's no track record.
no,
You know,
it would be like
nobody's
saying,
going to take a risk and lose
no
their
one's gonna take
job.
it. Yeah, no one's going to take a risk. It would be like me trying to say, oh, I want to do a holographic vinyl right now. You know, it's like, what? So what? You know, such thing? That's crazy talk. You know. So I ended up having to deal with, you know, you know, I started to learn pretty quick that if I don't really get with the program, especially with a few people here, that I'm not going to get anything. I could lose it all. And you could. And like you said, you can lose it in a second just by doing something, the right thing wrong. It could just be over for you. So you have to kind of be willing to accept different things beyond what you had. But it's a delicate balance, because as an artist, you think that, okay, this is what I have in mind. This is what I want to put out. This is the narrative. These are the songs. These are the order. You know, everything is all packaged in your head. But then when you have to interface with a company, oh, it's a lot different. It's a lot different.
Yeah. Well, I know there was a few projects in between, and you know, the short-lived Contraband project with Shanker and Tracy Guns and Cher Ross. But bring us to the present, because I know in your mind you're always a creative. You're always keeping the fire burning, and now is a new opportunity. You've recorded a new album, Bloodline, and I know Alex Kane, who we've interviewed on this channel, who's a great talent, helped produce that and play some guitars. But tell us how this latest project came up. And I know it's a limited edition, and you guys are probably sold out of that already. But I'm sure people are screaming for a reprint. Talk about the latest lineup, and with songs and the players you're playing with now.
Well, we after we had another big snafu with our manager after the thing ended with Epic, and then we went to EMI and with this different manager, and they were the label and the manager were kind of in cahoots, and they kind of dreamed up this idea of that Contraband thing. That was a really a short-lived, real comedy of errors, really, from the inside, from my perspective. Lots of people love the album. I'm always hearing compliments. They just love. They think it's great, but they don't know the backstory of it. But it wasn't very pretty, and it ended up. I've told the story before, so I don't even have to go into it. But it ended up kind of putting the band pretty much killing the band at that point, and we just kind of took off. And I took a solid year off of just doing nothing music at all. I mean, I started doing my metal sculpture again, and being a physical kinetic artist other than a kinetic artist. And we got back together again to do an album called Gathering of the Faithful, which is really unknown. That was a really indie kind of a cultish record too. And then we did a live album in I did at that point, after Gathering of the Faithful, the band completely disbanded, and Spencer went to live in Germany. Chris went back to England. I don't know what happened to Greg, but I was out. I used to go out on vacation out in Croatia at the coast, and I had a guy there that knew the band, and he said, why aren't you playing anymore? And I said, well, I don't know, I'm just not really into it. And I frankly, Jay, I just had such a bad taste in my mouth from just the whole music. I mean, I liked doing music, I liked playing, but literally everything else about it I didn't like. The only thing I liked about it was when the show started, and that's the only time I liked. Everything else I just couldn't stand. I couldn't stand the recording. I couldn't stand the bullshit, the politics, the lies, the deceit, the betrayal, and I just didn't want it, And he was pounding me. Hey, well, look, I got a really good band, and we'll learn. How about if we learn a whole set of the Shark Island songs, and no pressure, and you can come and just sing at our rehearsal, just see how you like it, and if you like it, we can go do some shows during tourist season, with little shows, and there's some bars and stuff, and just for gags, just for fun. And I said, okay. So he kind of talked me into it. I figured, there was no work for me to do. I just had to show up, literally, and do nothing. And the band was really good. I was going, wow, these guys are really good. They learned all the little nuances that I thought that they would just kind of glide over, but they didn't. And we did, and then we ended up doing a couple of gigs, and then we did a big gig, a live album in the capital of Croatia, and on Halloween. And I dressed up as Andy Warhol, and we recorded it and made a vinyl record out of it, and with like kind of a Halloween theme to it. And it all went so easy that I was going, this is that wasn't that hard. That wasn't that bad. So then after a couple of years, we ended up doing some touring out in UK, and then uh, the owner of Manifest Record had called me. We kind of know each other. He says, "Well, hey, why don't we do another album?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know." He says, so we got together with I got together with Alex. Where I met Alex was at the Monsters of Rock cruise. He was a guitarist, because I had to get another guitarist to come and play. And we kind of like had some good conversations and hit it off. So we decided, like, well, why don't you and Alex, get together, write some songs, and see if we got enough for an album. So that's how it was dreamed up. So all of a sudden, here I was, after two lengthy hiatus sabbaticals. Here I was again. Now we're going to do another album. And frankly, I look at the album and I think, when I was writing it, I said, well, this will probably be my swan song. It'll be the last one I'm going to do for sure. But I'm not angry about it. It's kind of a decision rather than something emotional. So we sat down, we wrote a bunch of songs together, and then when we went to Croatia, and we did all the basic tracks with that band that was the backup band from Croatia. So, and plus, it's a lot cheaper to record there. I mean, a really, really nice studio, like top-notch studio. We recorded, all the basic tracks, drums, bass, a lot of the guitar. And then we brought that back, and then we started doing vocals out in Burbank. And we were just piecing it together, and just kept going. And we had a couple of false starts, even before I forgot that part. Before Alex got involved in it, I had tried to start something, but just for demo purposes, and it was just, it met with so much resistance that I had to scrap the thing. One thing went wrong or another, and I had somebody I was working with that I couldn't get along with. But then when Alex got in, and we got the fresh start from the basics in Croatia, and we finished it up here. And then we had Sylvia Massey doing the mastering, which was, that in itself was pretty spectacular. She was really into it, and that was pretty, from an inside, that was pretty flattering to have her do the mastering and stuff. And
she's got massive credits. Look her up. She's the real deal.
Yeah, she was like big leagues, right? So we got the album, and then we decided to say, well, let's print 1,000 records, and we'll just send it to our kind of our cult friends, people who want it. And we didn't have really any expectation about it doing, and we sold out like almost immediately that first batch. And then we realized that there was still a demand there, and there was still demand in other territories that we really couldn't reach, like Japan and Australia, Korea, and Germany, even in UK. We couldn't really reach it exactly, because we were, it was all in-house. I mean, it was too much to do. So we sold out with the first batch of it, and then we decided just to go, look, we're gonna cut a deal with a label, and we got with Decca Records, and we cut a deal with them to um, distribute the album in all those four mentioned territories. So but in order to do that, one of the stipulations was that they wanted the record to be a little bit different. In other words, bonus tracks. We got to get a bonus track happening. So I got together with Chris and did a companion song for the last song on the record called On and On. And it's called Someday. And we recorded that and then added another producer's cut of Rocks on the Rocks. And now it's being distributed again worldwide. It's called Bloodline 2.020. So it's like that. It's got that 2020 in there. It's kind of clever. And now it's easy because we don't have to do much, but do interviews, have talks like you and I are doing right now. We don't have to worry about running to the post office and sending things off. So it almost got a brand new life.
Yeah, absolutely. New energy, new collaborators. Like I say, Alex is definitely a spark plug, and I know you're always coming up with creative ideas. So, that's the one thing, especially in a year like 2020, people are, they're stuck at home. They want to hear some new music, want to watch a new documentary, want to see a movie, or explore something. And it's a great time, and it's a welcome addition. To hear some exciting new music with people like yourself that have a pedigree and haven't given up, and just have those experiences that you can write about. A lot of people are writing music vicariously about somebody else's life and world, and you've lived a life, and through the hard knocks and ups and downs, you got something to talk about. And we love the album and encourage everybody to go out and check it out. SharkIslandMusic.com is the website. Our guest has been Richard Black. He is the co-founder and the main guy. He is a songwriter and with a lot of history. Please go check out Shark Island. And Richard, it's a pleasure to join you, and hope to see you soon. We have some other things to talk about. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for your interest. Thanks.